What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history, I mean, the real origins of civilization, was just scratching the surface?
Mm-hmm.
What if there were these huge, forgotten eras, hidden continents, maybe even giant beings that shaped our world in ways we can barely, imagine?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at some really fascinating parts of H.P. Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, specifically the bits about the fourth and fifth races, their civilizations, and their destruction.
Right. And our mission here really is to unpack some pretty wild concepts.
Yeah.
Lost continents like Lemuria and Atlantis, these ancient giants, how human consciousness itself might have evolved.
And how these big ideas are kind of woven into ancient texts that, let's face it, can seem incredibly dense and confusing.
Exactly. We want to pull out the key nuggets, help you connect the dots, and see why this stuff seriously challenges, well, a lot of conventional thinking. So yeah, let's unpack it.
Okay, let's start somewhere that immediately shakes things up regarding early humans, the Lemurians, the third race, according to the text. And we're not talking primitive cave dwellers here.
No, the source says they built huge cities. And it paints this amazing picture. Structures made from rare earths and metals, even using lava straight from the earth.
Yeah, and white and black stone for buildings and even statues of themselves. It just sounds completely different from the standard Paleolithic image, doesn't it?
Totally. So who were these Lemurians? How could they do all this?
Well, the text claims they weren't savages at all, but actually highly civilized nations, guided by what it calls divine dynasties. You can think of them as maybe advanced spiritual beings or intelligences,
Guiding humanity.
sort of steering early human development.
Yeah.
And these Lemurians supposedly possessed perfect knowledge of astronomy, architecture, and mathematics.
Wow. Okay, that just completely flips the script on early civilization. And the timeline, that's also pretty staggering.
Oh, absolutely. It says hundreds of thousands of years passed before their first cities even showed up.
Yeah.
I mean, put that against our recorded history.
It just dwarfs it completely. And the source gives examples, like specific locations.
It does. It mentions rock cities and cyclopean buildings. There's one described 30 miles west of where Easter Island now stands, apparently destroyed by volcanoes.
Interesting. Easter Island again.
Right, and it explicitly points out the similar style of those giant stoneworks on Easter Island and ruins in Peru, like Pachacamac and Tiwanaku, suggesting a common, really ancient source. And the very first big cities, it says, were on the continent that's now basically Madagascar, although the original Lemurian continent was much, much bigger.
But here's something really thought-provoking. Humanity back then, in this Lemurian age, it wasn't all the same. There was a split.
Yes, a kind of dichotomy. You had the civilized, those supposedly favored by their karma, guided by that divine intelligence, the city builders, the knowledge seekers.
The others.
And then you had what the text terms the savage groups, less developed. It claims some of these actually extinguished the divine spark of mind within them.
Extinguished it. What does that mean?
Well, it's interpreted esoterically, but the text controversially suggests modern Australian Aboriginals and similar groups are descendants of those specific lines. It raises, difficult questions about divergence and karma.
Yeah, that's complex. And it sounds like there was a cost to this civilization, though. The source says developing the physical and intellectual side came at the cost of the psychic and spiritual.
Precisely. That innate command over one's own inner nature, it started to fade.
So what did they lose? What was this psychic or spiritual side?
Well, think about it this way. What we call magic now, the text says, was basically their great science of wisdom. And its secrets weren't secret at all. They were public knowledge.
So like intuition, maybe inner senses, that sort of thing became less prominent as intellect grew.
That's the idea, a fundamental shift in human capabilities, away from inner knowing towards external knowledge.
The source mentions a decline, an elect hierarchy following Sons of Will and Yoga, and then the end of Lemuria, the first big cataclysm. How did it happen?
Primarily through subterranean fires and volcanic activity.
Yeah.
It started way up near the Arctic Circle, the text says, and the destruction kind of rolled south, ending near modern Sri Lanka or Ceylon. Massive geological changes.
Okay, so fire and earth reshape the planet, and out of that, a new era, a new race emerges, the fourth race.
Yeah.
The Atlanteans. And these guys were big.
Oh, yeah. Described as giants whose physical beauty and strength peaked. The text gives a specific height, 9 yadis high.
9 Yetis. What's that?
It translates to about 27 feet tall.
27 feet. Seriously.
Seriously. And what's really striking is how the text immediately links us to the gigantic statues on Easter Island. It says they're mostly between 20 and 30 feet. Captain Cook apparently measured many at exactly 27 feet tall, 8 feet across the shoulders.
Wow. So the text is saying those statues depict Atlanteans. Made by them or of them?
It implies they are remnants related to the Atlanteans, representations of their stature, not works of much later, smaller people. Imagine beings that size walking around.
It's hard to picture. And Atlantis itself, the continent, was it a whole new landmass popping up?
Not entirely new, no. It's described more as a development, an Atlantic prolongation of Lemuria. Basically, islands and peninsulas coalescing over a vast period.
Okay.
But the text is clear. Lemuria should no more be confounded with the Atlantis continent than Europe with America. Distinct phases, distinct landmasses, even if connected geologically.
Got it. But this golden yellow fourth race, as it's called, they didn't stay golden for long, did they? There was a fall.
Right. They eventually became black with sin, transforming from demigods to semi-demons.
Ooh, how did that happen? What was the sin?
It seems it wasn't one single event, but a long, gradual decline. A loss of that innate spiritual wisdom they inherited, leading to, well, misuse of their powers, focusing on material things, maybe sorcery instead of sacred science.
But not all of them.
No, there were holdouts. The text mentions the White Island, Seven Dwipas, as the earliest, kind of sinless part of Atlantis. Home to the first Zarathustra and the Magas, the Magi caste.
The Magi, like the ones from the Christmas story.
Well, the source connects them, but argues their origins are far, far older. It uses allegories involving figures like Krishna, who it dates to 5,000 years ago, interacting with these Magas to show this lineage stretches way back into Atlantean times, not just to the 8th century CE or something.
Okay, interesting. So just like Lemuria had its fiery end, Atlantis met its doom too, but differently.
Yes, Atlantis was primarily destroyed by water due to successive disturbances in the Earth's axial rotation.
Axial shifts, like the planet tilting.
That's the implication. And this was the 4th great deluge of this round. So not the only flood, but a major one in a series of world-altering water cataclysms.
So not just Noah's flood, but part of a bigger pattern. Was it punishment?
The text presents it more as a natural fate, part of a cosmic cycle governed by law like karma. It wasn't just punishment, though misuse of free will played a part in their decline.
And some were saved.
Yes, the holy ones, those who hadn't sort of lost their spiritual sight, what the text calls the third eye of inner perception. They were saved because of karma and natural law, and crucially, their prevision. They saw it coming.
Foresight, because they were still spiritually tuned in.
That's the idea. A sensitivity to the planet's cycles and impending changes that, well, maybe we've largely lost.
And this event, this cataclysm, it led to a major split in humanity.
A profound division, yes. The text claims 2/3 of mankind ended up ruled by lower material spirits, who basically took over their natures. But 1/3 remained faithful, spiritually aligned.
And they joined.
They joined the nascent 5th race, our current humanity. So this separation is presented as a kind of bottleneck event, really key to our own origins.
Okay, wow. Now, you mentioned ancient texts seeming confusing. The Puranas, for example. The source says they can seem like an absurd farrago of nonsense if you're not initiated. Why is that?
Well, this deep dive explains it's often intentional. There are deliberate blinds put in place.
Blinds, like deliberate misdirection.
Kind of. Things like chronological blending, mixing up events from different ages, withholding of meanings, using key terms without fully explaining their esoteric sense, and ambiguous geography, talking about kings and lands as if they're just here on Earth, when the meaning might be cosmic or relating to other planes.
Fascinating. So it's like layers of code to protect the knowledge.
Yeah, it's one interpretation. Protect it from misuse, or maybe ensure only those ready for it could understand. The truth is presented as multi-layered.
Give me an example.
Okay, the Seven Dwipas, these 7 continental islands mentioned in the Puranas. On one level, yes, they relate to land masses on Earth through different epochs. But esoterically, they also refer to our planetary chain. Jambu Dwipa is Earth, but the other 6 are described as invisible companion globes linked to Earth's evolution.
Invisible globes. Wow, so not just physical geography.
Exactly. And the text notes that ancient astronomers like Bhaskara Acharya actually understood this, equating things like the Puranic Sea of Milk with the Milky Way galaxy. So there's a cosmological layer too.
So these genealogies and stories aren't just about kings and battles on Earth.
They encompass vastly more. The Puranic accounts, according to Blavatsky, cover a history of 3.5 rounds, these huge cycles of planetary and human evolution. They include pre-human periods and the whole story of spirit descending into generation, into physical bodies.
And where do we fit in, our current humanity?
Our specific cycle, the text clarifies, began with a figure called Vivasvata Manu at the start of this 4th round we're currently in.
Okay. And there's a special significance given to India, or Haratavarsha?
Yes, very much so. It's called the land of works, the key place for karmic evolution. The idea presented is that no being, not even a god, can achieve final liberation without going through the human evolutionary cycles, specifically those centered karmically in this region.
So it's like a crucible for spiritual development.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Central to the whole plan.
And how on earth do you decode all these layers? You need a key, right?
More like 7 keys. The text says the full records of Lemurian life, for instance, are preserved in secret annals, but interpreting them requires 7 keys of symbolism: realistic, idealistic, spiritual, and 4 others that are beyond our normal consciousness.
7 keys. And figures like Noah or Vivasvata, they're more than just flood survivors.
They're presented as logograms, like symbolic figures whose stories contain these complex records, almost like archetypal data carriers for cosmic and human history.
Right. Okay, that's a lot to take in. But is there any, evidence that resonates with this stuff today? Echoes in time?
Well, the source argues that modern geologists are increasingly being forced to admit the existence of these lost lands, whether they call them Lemuria or Atlantis or something else.
And what about established civilizations like Egypt?
Ah, that's a great point mentioned in the text. It quotes Ernest Renan, a 19th century scholar, observing that the earliest Egyptian civilization seems to appear already mature, fully formed, with no apparent archaic period leading up to it. Suggesting it didn't just spring out of nowhere, but likely inherited its knowledge from a much older, preceding civilization that must have existed for myriads of centuries, a legacy perhaps from Atlantis.
That fits the narrative. And what about knowledge, like astronomy? You mentioned the Lemurians had it.
The text points to astronomical records that seem impossibly ancient by conventional standards. Hindu calculations, it claims, cover cycles spanning nearly 850,000 years.
850,000 years, compared to what we usually credit ancient cultures with.
Exactly. It dwarfs Greek knowledge, even the claimed Egyptian records of 87,000 years. It also mentions Egyptian priests telling Herodotus that the pole of the Earth and the pole of the ecliptic had once coincided, showing awareness of massive long-term astronomical shifts, like changes in the Earth's tilt.
Which connects back to the destruction of Atlantis.
Precisely. It all ties into this bigger picture of vast cycles and catastrophic but lawful changes. The destruction of the continents was a gradual, lawful process, not just random chaos.
And our current continents? They've been through this before.
That's the claim. They have been submerged and have reappeared several times. It's presented as a normal, albeit incredibly long-term geological process.
Which leads to a pretty mind-bending prediction for the future.
Yeah, the text states quite confidently that at the next great cataclysm, our current continents will go down and the lands of Lemuria and Atlantis will rise again. Not the exact same lands, maybe, but new continents on the old sites.
So the Earth itself is seen as constantly reshaping in these grand cycles.
The periodical sinking and reappearance of these mighty continents, it says, is a fact that will be demonstrated. It's presented as an inevitability within the cosmic clockwork.
Wow. Okay, what an incredible journey we've just taken. We've gone from these immense Lemurian cities built from lava and stone potentially millions of years ago.
Right, guided by divine intelligence.
To the 27-foot tall Atlantean giants and their eventual fall. And then trying to decode these ancient texts that hide layers upon layers of meaning about cosmic cycles and planetary evolution.
It really throws our standard view of history out the window, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Primitive versus advanced looks very different through this lens.
Absolutely. And seeing how civilizations, according to this source, haven't just risen and fallen randomly, but as part of these huge lawful cycles, cycles involving geology, but also shifts in human consciousness itself.
That's maybe one of the most striking ideas, isn't it? That psychic and spiritual abilities were once common, part of a science of wisdom, and were sort of traded away gradually for intellectual and material focus.
So what does all this really mean for you listening right now? If entire continents, advanced civilizations even, have risen and fallen multiple times, if our own lands might be temporary in the grand scheme of things, destined to sink as others rise, what does that tell us about time? about progress. Are we really moving linearly forward, or are we part of a much bigger cyclical story? Our place in the universe feels different somehow.
Certainly challenges the idea of simple linear progress.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what other secrets are still out there, maybe waiting under the waves like the text suggests, or hidden in plain sight, still encoded in the myths and symbols we haven't fully deciphered. What else have we forgotten? And maybe, what future might we be cycling towards? Lots to think about.